My name is Maria Naranjo. Let's see, what's my title? I have a number of titles. I'm the Deputy Director of the local 32BJ of this district, which is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I've been with the union 28 years, and I've served in a number of roles from organizing director to bargainer to working with community groups. And I'm also an elected leader here. We have 20,000 members in this region, and I'm the district chair, so I'm the elected leader of the membership here, 32BJ Capital Area District. 32BJ is a labor union. We are part of the Service Employees International Union, and we represent janitorial workers, security officers, airport workers, and we basically, our main goal is to make sure that they have a strong collective bargaining agreement, so they have wages and benefits to improve their lives. But we're not really just only focused on our members. We also do things that not necessarily our members, that directly affect our members or our dues paying members. We do a lot of things on the environment, on immigration justice, racial justice. So I would just say we're a social justice advocacy organization. And troublemakers and agitators and fighters and all that good stuff. That's how I would define who 32BJ is. So kind of if you look around the room, and I was telling you earlier, kind of take a look around the room where we have these photos. Our history really is a history from the very beginning of a campaign called Justice for Janitors, which the purpose was, just as the title said, or the campaign name says, justice for the janitorial workers who were cleaning these multi-billion-dollar office buildings in Washington, D.C. or in New York or in L.A. And in Washington, D.C., we started the campaign in the late 80s. And around the 90s, really started seeing this movement of people, mostly immigrant or African-American workers, who wanted to have a union contract. And we did a lot of militant activity, mostly part-time workforce. Couldn't use the traditional norms of organizing a union. So we would do strikes, we would block bridges, we would do civil disobedience, and that was one of the main issues that we had early on. And through the years, continued to grow not only in Washington, D.C., but in Baltimore, Montgomery County, Maryland, and Virginia, where we brought a strong union contract to janitorial workers. Security officers, so you can kind of see on our walls here, next group of folks who were, frankly, didn't have a lot of good wages and benefits. Started talking to them, got them unionized, and they became a part of 32BJ. And then recently, airport workers, all those folks. I mean, now it's a little different because we're in a pandemic, but pre-pandemic, all the folks who, take your bags at the airport or help you check in are folks that we were trying to organize. So those are some of the big campaigns that we are working on. But our members' issues face everything from minimum wage to paid sick days to immigration issues. It's funny. I have this image of, there was a group called the Gray Panthers. I don't know if you remember, if you know who those folks were. I think they were on the executive board of Jobs with Justice. And they were, how can I put this? They were like older activists, more mature activists who would come out. And I'm blanking on their names. I think I think it was Rose Flynn, maybe. Anyway, they were older activists, basically, like in their 60s, 70s. And they would always come out to our activities, and they were part of Jobs with Justice, as memory serves, around 2002, 2003. And my interaction with them was really completely because we had a contract campaign. We were trying to fight for health care for part-time workers, and we knew we couldn't do it alone. We had about 7,000 members at the time, and I think about 3,000 were bargaining their contract, and we didn't have other members outside of DC at that point. And we really said we need to see if there's other groups out there, other coalitions who can help move this narrative that part-time workers deserve health insurance. And that was the first time I remember. I don't think Mackenzie was there at the time. I believe it was Chris Garlick. I could be wrong about that. But they would, we'd reach out to them. That was before there were smartphones. There was no text messages, no email blasts, none of that stuff. I think we just phone banked people. And they would come out to our activities and support us, in particular in that fight for health care for part-time workers. I mean, I would say, the thing with any organization is that you're very insular in a lot of ways because you're so focused on what you have in front of you. And I shared with you some documents about a planning meeting, a retreat I pulled out in my old files. I've been here 28 years and I tend to collect a lot of paper. And I did find that document that I shared with you where we had a retreat, a day-long retreat to say, how do we work together? And that is my earliest recollection of, I would say, really being with a group of folks that were more than just labor unions. Because labor unions are used to working with each other. We do coalition, the Teamsters, and HERE, but this was going to be a little bit more of a larger group with a larger vision. And I remember sitting with, I think it was Tristan Faulkner, who since has passed, sitting in a meeting, I think it was at the Teamsters Hall, and just coming up with a vision and a plan about how we were going to really build justice for people, not just workers, but people in the District of Columbia. So that was my interaction initially. There were steering committee meetings. We assigned a staff person who was based in DC to do those types of things. But mainly it was coalition support. It was support when we had an issue, minimum wage or paid sick leave, that we would work in coalition with them, strategize, but also support each other, whether we were testifying at city council or, for me, a lot of my work is in the streets. So it was really just being in the streets with our brothers and sisters from Jobs with Justice is my sort of recollection or my interaction with that incredible group of people. I do, and again, I'll share some photos with you. In 2003, I talk about this fight for what we called health benefits for part-time workers. Most of the janitorial workers in the District of Columbia at that time were working 4 or 5 hours a night. And it was unheard of to, why would they get health care? Why would they get some type of health benefit? People thought we were nuts for even talking about it at the bargaining table. And we decided to target a building, which I think was the American Medical Association, the AMA, because it was a building that was owned by them, and our cleaners there didn't have health care. And Jobs with Justice came out with us, and we had paid someone to carve like one of those ice sculptures, like it was probably this big, and it was a heart. And we were like, they have a frozen heart because they're not giving our janitors health care. And with Jobs with Justice and with our members, we went into the lobby and we said, we're dropping off this heart. And we have this great picture of Jaime Contreras, our vice president, in there. And the people are like, wait, what's happening? You can't, it's going to melt all over the lobby. The point is that we want health care for our cleaners, and open up your heart and don't have such a frozen heart. And I remember the Jobs with Justice was out there with us in the streets, and we're like, wow, this is kind of nuts that you guys are doing this, but we're in this with you. So that's always what Jobs with Justice have stood. When I think about Jobs with Justice is, working together with unions, working together with our members, and understanding that it's one fight and it's one struggle, and we're going to just be much better and much stronger if we do things together. And that's always what I've always had the understanding and the vision of what this incredible organization is about. In 2006? Yeah, in 2006, there was an immigrant coalition, and I believe DC Jobs with Justice was a part of it. I could be wrong, but Jaime Contreras might know that better, but I was part of the coalition. And that's when we really started talking about, what does this mean to have a local presence of immigrant rights groups? Because a lot of times when there's these marches and these activities, you'd have national groups fly in and bus in, and that was great, and it looked really great. But we're the local people. These are mostly folks here from Central America who've come to this particular area of the District of Columbia. Where's the local group? So a lot of those conversations happened in 2006, and you had major mobilization in 2007 and beyond. And I think in 2012? Sorry about the dates. Maybe it was 2012. We worked in coalition to get the driver's license law passed here in the District of Columbia, which allowed undocumented immigrants to get some type of ID so they could, drive their car safely and securely and not have to present certain types of documentation. And that was definitely something that we worked with a number of different groups, but in particular with Jobs with Justice, and not only testifying, but making sure that that benefit was not only a benefit for our union members, but also for our entire community. Our members' kids, their uncles, their aunts who lived in the District of Columbia. And since then, any type of immigration march or activity that we've had, we've always had DC Jobs with Justice, marching with us and standing with us the entire way.
Sectors.
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting question. Our history is interesting here in DC because we had a real big breakthrough in the District of Columbia right around 1999, 2000. And I understand this is the 20th, and the math doesn't add up. I totally get that, but I'm totally convinced that they were there in 1999. Maybe the National Jobs with Justice and not the DC were there when we were doing activity there. But when we were organizing our security officers, for example, who are in the District of Columbia, God, when was that? When did we start that campaign? Let me think here. 2004? Yeah, I'm going to say 2004. Jobs with Justice, was there in solidarity with us. We would do blitzes and that type of stuff, and we would reach out to them. If we were trying to set a wage, for example, for security officers at City Council, it's great to have unions speak on that, but it's even more powerful to have community allies and other folks speak on that. And that's an example for us where we actually set a prevailing wage for security officers in the District of Columbia that we could not have done by ourselves. And DC Jobs with Justice was there with us during that time. And that allowed us to continue to grow. We've been organizing at the airport, DCA, and Dallas. And I know that's not necessarily the jurisdiction, if you will, but DC Jobs with Justice has always been supportive of us in terms of our, whether it's doing a delegation to, an airline or marching with us at the airport, always with us during those times. Sure. Before the pandemic, I had met with the two sisters from DC Jobs with Justice about, because we had just passed this incredible language in our collective bargaining agreement around sexual harassment and about really not only defining what sexual harassment and assault is, but also giving our workers the tools to fight it and report it. And this was right before the pandemic. I sat down with Elizabeth, and I can't remember the other sister's name off the top of my head. And we had all these amazing ideas of how we could work together to do an education campaign. And they had, I think, a grant with Time's Up. And, there was all of this excitement about how we could really just take this to the next level. Quite frankly, with workers who may not necessarily feel comfortable speaking on this. I mean, you definitely had a movement of women who talked about sexual harassment, but there's a difference between, a janitorial worker and a security officer versus, a white-collar worker or a white woman speaking of that. So we had all these ideas, and unfortunately COVID hit, so that kind of stayed on the back burner. So my hope is that we would revisit that and figure out ways. I think post-pandemic, we're going to have a lot of work to do to really build and rebuild the District of Columbia. Jobs with Justice, DC Jobs with Justice knows that essential workers have continued to go to work in our sector, which is the janitorial and security sector, but restaurants and HRE, hotels have suffered. So what I would love to see in the next 20 years is to get through this pandemic in a way where we're stronger, where we're more innovative in the way that we connect with people using technology, but really bring DC to the powerful city that we know it can be, and not shortchange workers' rights because of the pandemic. And that's something I'm sure that, I know unions, and I'm sure DC Jobs with Justice is going to make sure it doesn't happen. So I'm really looking forward to an incredible next 20 years. It's been a long 20 years, and we've done such incredible work. Again, everything from the support from our contract campaigns to being in the street to getting $15 as a minimum wage in DC. That's huge. I mean, that is unheard of. You go to Virginia and the minimum wage is $7.25, and you come here to DC and it's $15. That's not by chance. That's because we made a choice to organize it and work in coalition and bring everyone together to make that happen. So I'm hoping that spreads to other outside DC areas. And I'm sure that will happen with DC Jobs with Justice. And maybe there's like a Virginia Jobs with Justice and Maryland one in the future.